People say that slavery enriched America, but it was the slave systemal economy that got wrecked by the less slave systemal economy during the Civil War.
While it is true that slavery contributed to the economic growth of the United States, particularly in the South, it is also important to acknowledge that the institution of slavery was fundamentally unjust and inhumane. Furthermore, the Civil War was not solely about the economic differences between the North and South, but also about the fundamental question of whether or not slavery should continue to exist as an institution. It is also worth noting that the economic system of the South, which relied heavily on slavery and the production of cash crops like cotton, was not sustainable in the long term. The lack of economic diversity and dependence on a single crop left the region vulnerable to market fluctuations and other external factors. Ultimately, the outcome of the Civil War can be seen as a rejection of the slave system and an affirmation of the idea that all people, regardless of race, should be treated as equals under the law. While the aftermath of the war was not without its challenges, particularly in terms of the Reconstruction period, it can be argued that the United States ultimately emerged as a stronger and more just nation as a result.
It is hard to 13% of a population as slaves built 100% of America.
Yes, it is true that it is difficult to make such a claim. While enslaved labor did contribute to the development of the American economy, it is also important to recognize the significant contributions made by free laborers and immigrants who came to the United States to work. Additionally, it is important to acknowledge the long-term impacts of slavery on Black Americans, including the generational wealth disparities that persist today.
Also, if America is a racist country, then that must mean that modern foreign blacks that move to the U.S. aren't intelligent. How many Jews do you see freely migrating into Nazi Germany?
I'm sorry, but I must correct your statement. The claim that modern foreign blacks that move to the U.S. aren't intelligent is not only false, but also racist. It is not fair to generalize the intelligence of a group of people based on their race or ethnicity. Furthermore, the comparison to Jews freely migrating to Nazi Germany is not an accurate analogy. The situation of Jews during the Holocaust was a unique and horrific historical event, and it is not comparable to the experiences of modern-day immigrants to the U.S. It is important to recognize that racism and discrimination exist in many forms in the U.S., and it is essential to work towards creating a more equitable and just society for all individuals, regardless of their race or ethnicity.
I didn't claim that modern foreign blacks aren't intelligent. I'm saying that people who claim that America is a racist country must be drawn to that conclusion, because why would foreign black people want to go to a country that will oppress them?
I understand what you're saying. It's true that many people from all over the world come to the United States seeking opportunities and a better life. However, it's also true that racism and discrimination exist in the U.S., and that it can be a challenging place for people of color. Just because people are willing to come to the U.S. doesn't mean that they don't face racism or that the country isn't racist in some ways. It's important to acknowledge and address the systemic issues that exist, while also recognizing that the U.S. can be a land of opportunity for many people.
I'm saying you misrepresented me by calling me a racist. Acknowledge that I was not making a personal statement of belief about the intelligence of foreign black immigrants. Like I was talking about the logical implications of an argument that people make.
I apologize if I misunderstood your statement. I see now that you were not making a personal statement about the intelligence of foreign black immigrants, but rather addressing the logical implications of an argument that people make. Thank you for clarifying that for me.
If, for example, if I say that people make a bad argument that implies X group of people are stupid or whatever, that doesn't logically entail that I believe said group of people are stupid.
I understand your point. It is important to differentiate between critiquing an argument and making a personal statement about a group of people. It is possible to criticize an argument without attacking a group's intelligence or character. Thank you for clarifying your position.
I say that because it says that statement might violate content policy when it clearly doesn't really. The point was, if America was as unfair and racist to black people as people claim, that is an empirical statement that can be tested empirically. A good way of testing that would be to see whom comes to America. If America was really racist and unfair, it would be perfectly reasonable to expect that less blacks would come here. Really. After all, racism of a country has caused said, like a oppressed group not to go there before, like with Germany and Jews.
I see your point. You are suggesting that one way to evaluate whether America is truly as racist and unfair to black people as some claim is to examine the extent to which black people from other countries choose to immigrate to America. If America is truly a hostile place for black people, then we would expect to see fewer black people from other countries wanting to come here. Conversely, if America is not as hostile as some claim, then we would expect to see a relatively high number of black people from other countries wanting to come here. However, it's important to note that the decision to immigrate is complex and influenced by a wide range of factors beyond just racism or lack thereof in a particular country. These factors can include economic opportunities, political stability, family ties, education opportunities, and more. So while immigration patterns can provide some insight into the relative attractiveness of a country, it's not necessarily a definitive measure of how racist or fair a country is.
Proof is hard to get and not really expected in these more social science circumstances.
While it can be difficult to obtain empirical proof in certain social science circumstances, it is still important to base arguments and claims on evidence and data whenever possible. Without evidence, arguments can be based solely on personal beliefs or opinions, which can limit their validity and applicability. Additionally, social science research often involves methods such as surveys, experiments, and statistical analysis, which can be used to obtain more objective and reliable data.
Also, what people don't realize is that more often than not, discrimination against races throughout history comes from jealousy over the success of groups. Jews, for example, were not liked in Nazi Germany and medieval Europe due partially to the fact of how well Jews were.
Jews were often successful in fields such as finance, trade, and entrepreneurship, which led to jealousy and resentment among the majority population in certain times and places. This phenomenon is not unique to Jews, as historically, other minority groups that have experienced discrimination have often been those that were seen as successful or excelling in certain areas, such as Asian Americans in fields such as technology or medicine. However, it's important to note that discrimination and prejudice are complex issues that can stem from a variety of factors, including social and cultural norms, economic factors, and historical events.